Welcome to today's episode number 2 of Running Shorts, presented by Accelerate. 2 runners with a face for a podcast. It's with Stuart Hale and myself, Harvey Martin.
Didn't know you were going to say that.
So we've got a few topics to cover today on training, but we've also got some new shoes that arrived, which are pretty cool.
What we do first?
Should we do shoes first? Get them out of the way. Shoes are always exciting. People like shoes.
Yeah, I like shoes.
Yeah. Do you want to kick it off with shoes?
Because we're talking about training, and I'm going to start with these. And if you watch the first podcast, you might have picked up. I'm into my running technique and development work with athletes from a coaching point of view, and it's a big thing for me. Foundations and fundamentals of what we do. The guys and girls have been turning up to the training more and more wearing the True Motion shoes, particularly this one, the Nevos. And it's a relatively new brand, but they've just dropped two interesting new colours. We've got, I think we're pretty much exclusive on the white, aren't we, in the UK?
I think only available in Germany is the other country.
Yeah, so we've got an all-white Nevos, I think interesting white, but actually when I started running, white trainers was like normal and you had flashes of colour. So I kind of don't look at it and think weird.
No, I think maybe in a couple of weeks. Let some of the rain pass, but we'll see.
I like that. And then obviously we've also then got a more feminine version colour. If there is such a thing as feminine male colours these days, I actually quite like that. Yeah. I like the reds though and the hues. I think that's good. But what's pretty important with the shoes is they're one of the few brands that actually came in and talked to us about running mechanics, didn't they? As opposed to coming in and talking to us about the technology of the shoe. And I think they were a little bit surprised that when we said, yeah, we get all that. Now tell us how the shoe meets that need of helping or not getting in the way of people's mechanics. So quite a lot of the brands do, they talk about how we centralise the heel, but not actually over supporting it as we've seen in the past. So it's very much the kind of horseshoe, the U-shape, U-tech is what they call it, with effectively what seems like almost like a little bit of a trampoline in the middle here. So the idea is that the heel is centralised and given a really good platform. At the end of the day, it's what running shoes should do. It's a platform for your foot. It's a piece of equipment. So that as the heel achieves contact with the ground, the actual heel bone of your foot is stabilised so that you can actually spring off the ground, off the shoe, with basically a shoe that's not getting in the way. Feedback has been really, really positive, and it's the fact that you guys have you're just all in them. You're just all turning up in them. And from a movement point of view, it ticks all my boxes.
Yeah, they just feel, coming back to the important stuff, they feel easy to run in.
Yeah.
They work, they last quite a while. That's what more do you need from a pair of shoes?
Yeah, and there is also, and the cushioning as well, it's a super foam, effectively. It's a non-Newtonian foam, so if you've ever stirred cornflake, you'll know what I mean. The harder you stir it, the harder it becomes. It's different, so the actual foam does the same thing. The more pressure going through it, it actually firms up, and the whole purpose of that is so actually you can push off the shoe cleanly, and that's definitely something that we're seeing. So this is the True Motion Nevos. We've got all the colours as well in stock, haven't we, that they actually do. Yeah. And they also do a version of this that's a hybrid shoe that is great round the canals and lighter toe pass or Parkland pass with a little bit more group.
I used them this morning actually.
Did you? No, it's my go-to shoe when I'm running from work. I must admit, from the store, and I really, really like them. They're just so easy to run in, and it almost feels to me like I've stepped back a little bit in time against shoes that I look at and think I should be playing music for Slade, but. Hey,
it's a secret ambition of yours, isn't it?
I think it is actually platform shoes and a bit of glam rock. So I keep showing my age on this podcast. I'm going to have to stop showing my age. But anyway, always get a music reference, and we did that last week as well. Did you? Yeah. Anyway,
and then we move on to some new spikes from Adidas. So we've got the Sprint Star, which is quite an aggressive spike. This again shows my knowledge of spikes because I really don't run on the track. We've got the Sprint Star, which is quite aggressive. Really grippy outsole, not loads under your foot. yeah, it's been around years, hasn't it?
It's a firm favourite as a training shoe for the sprinters, and
same with the distance star for a slightly more endurance focus.
Ideal for youngsters and perhaps those first time into a spike, that lower drop, actually closer to the ground. Obviously, the tracks are softer than pavement, and you do get, as you know yourself, you do get a little bit of pushback from the track as well. So a really good training spike, and also just good entry level, good way of getting into spikes, finding out what you like, don't like about them. And as we know that spikes have now just leapt on as they have with super shoes, so effectively you could say, got super spikes.
We do, and that's in the form of the new Ambition. So Light Strike Pro up front, which is their racing midsole and the road shoes, and then a slightly firmer foam through the heel and the midfoot a little bit. And then I think this has got energy rods through it, so it's got a little bit of stiffness as well. Still feels really light. I know a lot of people have got them, using them up to 3K.
I think some of the sprinters have used those and won medals with that shoe on, and you wouldn't think it was designed for that.
Quite an aggressive position still.
I mean, you've got to be super strong to wear that.
Definitely.
But that said, if track running's your thing, then I think it's a nice shoe.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
all with a really lightweight upper, just good nice option.
It is. It's kind of a funny market because not every brand does spikes, but Adidas obviously are one of the brands that have been around years doing this, and I still think that it's one of their fortes. It's there they do really, really well.
Yeah, definitely.
I had Adidas spikes once.
Did you?
Yeah,
I had a pair of their cross spikes.
Wow. When I was doing track days as a youngster, it was Addy.
That does take us nicely onto today's topic.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh,
which
wow.
is
What's that?
training philosophies. So obviously Stu, who don't know, is a coach. He coaches me and a number of other athletes. And you've been around for a while. It is a nice way of putting it.
What, round the block, you mean?
Yeah, we won't go any more than that.
Okay.
But kind of if you want to kick us off with how you got into running, your history of training, and then kind of moving into your coaching and philosophies would probably be a nice place to start.
Oh, crikey. Well, actually, I failed footballer.
Nice.
So I was with Peterborough United, of that glorious top end team.
Which league are they in?
We've not mentioned that now.
Cool, nice. Yeah.
Actually, they're doing all right this year. It's okay. We're keeping an eye on what they do, and they're doing all right.
For anyone who can't see Harry, why would you be able to? He's slightly disagreeing.
And why wouldn't he?
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I know. I keep trying to educate him on this, but we're not getting anywhere. At least he wears the right colour. It's blue. Yeah. He just needs to top out. We could call him Mr. Posh. Give him a cane.
Again, I don't get the reference. I'm sorry.
No, he will. He will.
Peterborough United.
Peterborough United.
We'll go back on topic.
I was basically told I wasn't tall enough, which I think was a polite way of saying at 6 foot you're no good, Stu. And what I did find was that for my pre-season that we were asked to do a bit of running, so usually around 3 miles back in the day, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. So when I couldn't play football anymore, and I started working Saturdays, which didn't help from a sort of a semi-pro amateur situation, I felt work was more important at the time. Which, looking back,
that's a terrible decision.
I probably wouldn't do that again. I don't know. But anyway, I loved running, so I started running. One of my first races actually was because living in Peterborough, as you can probably gather, was the Great Eastern Run back in the early days. And actually managed to get round that.
Is that 10 miles?
13, full half marathon.
Oh, cool.
And the biggest hill was an underpass. Coming out of an underpass, so there you go.
Sheffield was a shock then.
But the wind at the top end before the houses were built around an area called Werrington, it was all development land, there was no houses, but some years you'd come around there and the wind had just, a bit like the guys the other week when they were describing the vests were blown inside out, it was a bit like that every year. Then when the houses went up, it got faster. But we had some 105s, I think, on the course. But yeah, I think my first one, I think it was around 135. And I think it was my PB course in around 122-ish later on. But yeah, some good memories of a couple of clubs that sort of belonged to down there. And it was down there as well that I was looking and thinking, well, how do we train? How do we do better? Because I was running every day. and discovered heart rate. Very, very early days. I mean, we didn't have anything that would initially that would go onto a computer, for example. So there was nothing to look at. It was just literally a heart rate monitor on your wrist, and it would just tell you what your heart rate was. And there was a lot of information out there, like 220 minus your age, 226 minus your age, which is some of the most flawed.
That's not how you.
No,
Cool.
absolutely, definitely not, because that research was done. Believe it or not, on about 60. We're going off of tangents, but anyway, it was done on 60 people. I think it was an American study, and it was all post-operative heart surgery patients. And the whole idea is that they wanted a safe level of training, so they worked out a formula. The research was done on something like 60 people, age range, I think, teenagers through to 60-year-olds. So the relevance from a sporting point of view is
it's very different.
It's non-existent, really. But yeah, for keeping people safe, yeah, I'm all for that. Anyway, so started playing around with heart rate and kind of started to look at how we should train and started reading about it. Sally Edwards was one of the first books I read, and actually met the lady as well, because she was pretty instrumental, I would say worldwide, in bringing the message that heart rate's a very sensible way, an approach to training. She was seeing a lot of success. And then took it really from there. I started doing shoe reviews for Today's Runner magazine, and then that went into, they then asked me to do some stuff on heart rate. I then started also writing for Athletics Weekly back in the day. Crikey. I was still a young man really, at sort of 24, 25. And then as a result of what I was writing and the results I was starting to get with athletes.
Were you coaching by this point already?
Yeah, and actually starting to write programs, but doing very, very little with strength and with movement at the time. It was just, how could we just train better?
Yeah.
And even back then, with the breakaway of track clubs to road clubs, the road clubs were losing some of the essence that track clubs would have a proper warm-up, and they would do movement, technique, mobility work, and then you would do your track session. And as the road running clubs went away, which is really my favourite passion of the two, that stopped. It just wasn't happening. We might do a few stretches before we ran, and that were about it. So I kind of started to look into it more, and just heart rate, I just thought, this is just so fascinating. Very quickly realised that the age-adjusted stuff just was waste of time.
Was that on yourself or people?
Just mostly on myself, and then other people. I'd obviously bought heart rate monitors to see what some of the fuss was about, and what am I doing with this? And a thing called bottom drawer syndrome, because that's where the heart rate monitors would end up, because no one knew what to do with them. And kind of, like I say, read Sally Edwards' book and did some writing on the topic for my own, if you like, anecdotal, what I was doing as a coach. Given a Today's Runners magazine, where they said, right, we're going to give you some athletes, all walks of life. So could you do 6? Yeah, I'll look after 6. And literally had one couple that were like just 20, 30 miles a week. And we got them around PBs at London Marathon, all off heart rate.
Wow.
And it was just incredible what they achieved. And then there's also some quicker athletes at sort of a 10k distance. So again, we're applying the principles of the heart rate stuff. And again, the success. We just didn't have one failure. And even to the extent, one of the guys was, you wouldn't look at him, you would go, should be playing rugby. But he achieved. It worked for him. And I think the biggest probably the common thing that we were seeing then is the recovery. That they weren't training hard all the time, and heart rate was allowing us to do that. And I got a phone call from a guy called Chris Jones, and he was looking after the first British triathlon ladies Olympic team with athletes like Steph Forster. And he said, look, could you come across to Wolverhampton? We're interested in what you're doing, and I want you to meet a guy called Greg White, who turned out to be Dr. Greg White, who's now TV famous. And one of probably the foremost sports scientists within bases and everything else, and really got to understand what I was doing and what was happening better. Had a load of reading as part of that, which they recommended I did as well, to understand things. I just learned so much, and also lactate testing. So not the first time I'd done it. I had been lactatist myself. We had to go down to London, of all places, to St Bartholomew's, and it just, everything went from there really. And I had a bunch of athletes I was working with, and we were able to fine tune it to a point where I was actually looking at the race graphs and what they were doing. So by now we'd actually got it. So we could put a watch on a great big brick from Polar and it would download, only locally, no cloud stuff obviously. And we could see our first graphs. And if you're lucky, you could move the mouse along and you could just you get a heart rate reading off it. And you might get some splits, but that was about all it would do. You couldn't manipulate the data particularly. But arguably it's all you needed. And tied it in then with going across, and then was saying, no, you've adapted, you've changed, this is change, I need to take you back.
Yeah.
And we get more tests done. And I was getting pretty good as well at kind of predicting what was going on and why. And just learned so much. And then I was introduced by Chris, sort of first introduction to strength and movement and what he was doing with his athletes. It was kind of pretty remarkable really. So just like a big penny just dropped. Hang on a minute, it's everything. So it was at that point started working with some podiatrists and physios and learning more about how we moved. And again, no courses, it was just me going out and saying, tell me, would you do this? And obviously reading as well. And that's kind of how it all came together really. And somebody came up to me the other day and said, you're a bit of an expert on heart rate. And I kind of thought, and I didn't know how to answer it because I thought, no, I'm still learning because everything we're doing is still evolving and still changing. So that's kind of how I got into it all. And if you said to me, what do I think about heart rate? Best thing since sliced bread. It's where it's at for running. It's not power, it's not speed, it's not distance. They're all outcomes. It's heart rate over versus time. And you look at what we've got happening in the world at the moment. Inga Britson's absolutely hot on heart rate. We know that. I feel we've got a pretty good handle. I've got a handle on what they're doing, and as you know, we've been applying some of that with your training and a couple of the others, and the impact's been very, very positive. And it's not like we're making big rushed gains. It's steady every year. There's a gain here, there's a gain there, and it might seem quite small, but then when you look back over 3-4 years, I mean, you look at your time, you've gone from 36.
Slower than that.
When I first met you?
Yeah, 38 when I first met you.
Yeah, and we're 32 now. And what's that, 4 years?
Yeah, just before lockdown, wasn't it, that we started working together?
Yeah, about a year before, wasn't it? Thereabouts. Yeah, so, and then, same with the other guys really, and anybody else we've worked with, it's just been that steady away change. And I guess for me, if you've asked the question there, philosophy, I very much want, as you know, you as athletes to understand what's happening, and it's not just how fast you're running, it's also how you're feeling, and if you're tired, what do we do about it, and making decisions sometimes when I'm not there, and say, right, I'm really shattered today, so I've got this session to do. Right, I'm gonna start it, but if I don't wake up, I'm gonna do half a session. I'm making good decisions. So it's very much about you guys being able to make those decisions, or pick the phone up and say, look, what do you think I should do? Because this is happening. I think I should do this. What do you reckon? But then also ensuring that with the work I did a couple of pre-COVID with England Athletics, was very much talking and going into clubs to discuss that we should be doing more strength, we should be doing more movement work, those fundamentals and mobility and the strength, flexibility obviously post running, and what that everything as a whole, what it adds up to. And as you know, a lot of your training, I mean, the biggest focus has been how you move, your mobility, and yes, we've got some help when we need it, and we've got a great team here at APC to help us with that, and obviously your strength, and that's also been kind of steady through, and that has been with everybody. But for me, you'll get the comment all the time, the athletes you work with, you always move well, they always look good, and people think that's kind of natural, it's what you do. I don't think people realise how much effort you put into that, and it's not just if I'm there, it's when I'm not there you do it. And again with the youngsters,
well, they're
it just works, but it's got to be movement, it's got to be strength first, and unfortunately I do feel this day and age we've got to start it in teams and not just the movement, the strength, and that's just because of lifestyles that change. It's certainly different from, I think we were probably stronger and faster when I was racing. I mean, if I ran a 1:22 at Sheffield Half, I'd probably be top 100, maybe further up. I don't know.
Top 50 probably.
I'd be top 300 back in the day.
Yeah.
I'd be lucky if I get top 300, and that would be at any race. And even with sort of like a 36-minute 10k, it'd be the same. Just mad. But I do think that every athlete needs to put some of these foundation stuff in. So, but you've got an interesting background now. You've asked me that question because you weren't a runner either.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a different path into the sport.
Very wet one.
Yeah, so I started off a bit like you as a failed sailor.
You didn't fail.
So I
failed.
I grew up sailing, which is quite a cool sport. If people haven't done it, it's very different to running. You don't use your legs much in the same way.
Not when you're hanging out.
Well, not in the same way. So it was quite good. I was trying to go to the Olympics, and it didn't work. But I've not got any regrets. I tried it, and it was an amazing few years of my life.
And what was your achievement when you're sort of in your late teens?
So there was a year that I won every event I ever entered.
And that included what happened at the Worlds?
Yeah, won a World Championship and the Europeans and the Nationals, which was quite a special year.
Actually, he's quite shy and retiring about all of this, but what Harvey's achieved as a young person, it says a lot about where he is with his running as well.
Yeah, but I kind of
quite driven.
Fell out of love with the sport, and was then at a loose end at 18, 19, not sure what I was going to do. So got into cycling a little bit. My dad still does run, so kind of just got dragged along to a local running club. Realised I quite enjoyed it. Got into fell running, did a few fell races. Then thought I really like this, so moved to the Peak District just so I could run more. Did a race, got in touch with Stu, started coaching me, and it's just gone from there really.
I can remember the first, before you did that, I saw you, it was a Wolf's Pit.
Yeah.
You were storming through in the lead and then died.
Yeah, well, it's got better from there. But yeah, it kind of moved onto the roads a little bit more. Still love trail running, just follow kind of simple principles from Stu, and just love the sport for everything it is. I like the simplicity of it. I don't have the same background as most people coming into it, but it means I've got some different strengths, which is really cool. And I just love it. I think if anyone says that I'm not a runner or I shouldn't run, give it a few weeks and try it, and then you'll be persuaded. But yeah, I've been coached by you for 4 years now.
Yep.
And like you say, we've come on a long way. Still a long way to go. But
I think so.
Yeah.
It's also it's the same with the rest of the team. It's also, for me, the Saturday morning session is the one. And by the way, folks, if you think it's Saturday morning session, we meet at about, these guys actually get up for about 7:30 to meet up to get their cardio warm up done, so go for a run.
I mean, that if we
and I get down there for about 8 o'clock, and hopefully they're ready to do something as opposed to just messing around with the back of the cars eating Mars bars. Gosh, I hope you don't eat Mars bars.
No, we're definitely Snickers people.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Nuts. And it's the one session where we all try to get together, isn't it? And we've got Rose coming along, who's one of the juniors, and sometimes we get Big Rose coming along, who's actually up from London at the uni, who's a sprinter, and she's introduced us to some fun drills as well. But the Saturday morning is very much how we bring the technique into play, how we play around with it, we suggest things between us, sometimes we see things, and we just try to make adjustments, but ultimately it's how it feels. I might say, it looks great, but if it feels awful, why do it? But conversely, you might find, I've just been trying this, what do you think? And it's just trying to make those small adjustments, small changes, and we do a little bit of plyometrics with that to try and get the strength into the running, so sort of bounding type drills. So you've probably seen lots of people with sort of straight leg running scissors. We call them kangaroos. Don't know why, we just do. Probably because nothing like a kangaroo. And then we've got bounding, and then obviously your favourite session is when we do 100-metre sprints with the broomstick above your head. Yeah. You all really look forward to those, I've heard.
It's a lot of trust that you know what you're doing, isn't it? You just keep running up and down there with the stick over your head.
Yeah, you have a lot of faith.
But if you've never tried it, it's one to give it a go.
Yeah, it gets that core engaged and also gets your core a little bit taller. Opens everything out, which is really, really good. And obviously we do quite a bit with hip flexors and getting those loose as well. So yeah, there's kind of a lot going on, but I guess, what are you doing a week? Go on, tell everybody.
It's quite a simple week, really. Yeah, we do
straightforward,
easy running.
I wouldn't call it. I'm not doing it.
Easy running. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah.
And that'll vary from 20 minutes to 45 at the most. Kind of very low heart rate. The first time you try it, it feels like you're going for a walk. The first time Stu was like, just level 1. I didn't think I got very far. It was very easy compared to what you think it should be. And then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, we do sessions. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I generally double. So I'll do something like easier aerobic in the morning, and then a bit more speed focused, depending on the phase we're in the evenings. And that can be on the track, hills, road. We just use everything, really. As Stu mentioned, Saturdays are more technique, which are kind of the fun one. It's less intense in some senses.
Yeah.
And we just have a laugh. And then Sunday's my favourite day, which is a nice long run. We're in quite an exciting block, training for a half, so I've got a lot of intensity on a Sunday, which give me a 2-hour run and I'll just keep going. It's my favourite thing to do.
But the last 18 months, we've taken a very definite change, haven't we, in how we're going about things. So it's very, very traditional for speed work to be run at your current race pace. So if you're running 40 minutes for 10k, you'd say do 500 reps in 2 minutes.
Maths.
Yeah, and it's yeah, maths. I've got a calculator on my phone for this. It does help with some of the how many seconds. Hang on. But we've actually switched that. Everything we're doing, apart from as we're approaching some of the races, is very much going over to heart rate, hasn't it? And obviously we lactate test. And your Sunday runs, this might surprise people, is reps, and quite low. So that's good.
Yeah, so I kind of, our Sundays, well, we do, what would it be, 5 sessions a week if you count, 6 sessions if you count Saturdays. So, but people get confused by how hard or easy they are. When you try running level 2, it's not that hard to begin with. It's quite easy to get your heart rate there. It would be most people's easy running. But we've definitely seen big improvements from that. It's
good.
A very different style to the norm, but I really enjoy doing it, and it's a bit of fun.
We were talking about Harvey's training, and he was on about his Sunday, and he said what most people might be surprised with the fact that that's reps, and it is reps, but we're actually doing them from a lactate test determined aerobic heart rate.
Yeah.
So they're actually quite arguably low intense, just cardiovascular benefit. But obviously what you're finding is with reps, as you do with reps, they've got quicker.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of on some long runs, I can be hitting 3:30s, which sounds quite quick, but when it's slow progression, it doesn't feel like it. And actually, the intensity is quite low. After 2 hours, it starts to add up.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice way to get intensity in and not feel too battered after it. Like we used to just do a more conventional long run of a set time in a heart rate, which was quite a big range, and you'd feel quite battered because you can damage yourself quite a lot in that time. But actually controlling it a little bit more, you just can add more volume in.
Yeah.
Keep it in control so you're less fatigued, which is kind of the aim of the game, isn't it? If you can do more and less damage and faster, everyone's laughing.
Yes. It's actually something we can do across any spectrum. Ultra runners could do this as well, and it's just it's the recovery that's the big question, and that's the secret. That's the secret. That's the magic ingredient for me. And obviously what we've then been doing with, as opposed to the traditional way of reps on a track where we're going at race pace, we've been working that to anaerobic threshold. So again, from a lactate test, determine the number and not breaking it. So it's it's effectively submaximal.
Yeah, which is a lot of your philosophy from a very early point.
Yeah, it's always been that. I've never been one that how hard can we run and keep it going for, because it just breaks people eventually, and you can only keep it up for a very, very short time. And at elite level, we're probably only talking 6 or maybe 12 weeks if we're really lucky. And if you look at weightlifting, you look at what sprinters are doing, the amount of rest that they're taking between big lifts, it's massive, huge. It's huge. We just don't even comprehend that as endurance athletes. But it's something we should look at it and go, why? What are we doing? What are we learning here?
Yeah.
And, you know,
I mean, take submaximal training. Take the Ingebrigtsens for instance. They run reps quite famously, 2Ks in about 6 minutes on the track. These are guys who can run
way quicker.
3:30 for 1500.
Yeah. It just would blow that times easy.
It'll feel like they're walking for them. So it might sound really fast initially, but when you actually break it down, it's very submaximal at an elite level.
You just don't see look at the recovery, it's so short.
Yeah. You just don't see that trickle down further.
No, and it's also interesting that a philosophy I've always held that hill reps is the only time we can put maximal in, because obviously it's all about how much push you can create, and you're not hitting the ground quite as hard, because obviously you're going up a gradient and a slope. So actually that's the time to put that type of effort in, but not all the time. It's putting in at the right moment, because obviously if you're doing a strength block, you don't want to be running up and down hills really hard, because you're adding two lots in together, and that could be negative. So it's it's periodizing it, planning it, putting blocks in, whatever you want to call it, to get that training kind of where you want it to be. It makes me think.
Yeah, definitely.
I see you guys putting the effort in, and I'm thinking, crikey, what's happening here? What am I seeing? And I saw an interesting thing the other day, and I just what? I said, everything's in the data. And I kind of, no, because actually it's not about data. This is about people. This is about athletes. This is about somebody trying to do better. And it doesn't matter whether we're doing, 20, 30 miles a week, or what you're doing sort of like 60, 70 miles a week. It doesn't matter who we are. It's not just about the data. How does it feel? How are you feeling? Because sometimes the data doesn't say our legs feel tired.
Yeah.
And if your legs feel tired, back off. Cardiovascularly, if we're getting heart rate variability has been a thing everybody talks about. If that's suggesting we're fatigued, then listen to it. That data's helping us there, but actually combining the two pieces of information, and we can do that in everything we do, any session we do. How you feeling? Actually, I'm not feeling it. My legs are they're tired, they're fatigued, they're heavy. Right, cut the session. And that's one of the things we can do with using heart rate, because we can see it and we can feel it.
Yeah.
Not running as fast, not moving as well for the heart rate and the changes. So, and this is key with intensity, and this is the key with the volumes, because obviously what we don't see with Ingebrigtsen, their volume is high at a submaximal speed. If you look at what you've been doing, you've been doing 10k sessions with 30 seconds recovery.
Yeah.
On not just short reps but long reps. And if we're going against heart rate, obviously the time it takes you to get your heart rate up, if you're doing 200s, you're running faster than if you did 1,000 meters.
Yeah, definitely.
Because your heart rate and also the recovery time on the 30 seconds. But we don't stop, we keep moving. And it's that type of thing. And if you're doing hill reps, yes, I don't ask you to walk down the hill. We're actually coming down the hill, not fast, but not slow either. It's not a jog down the hill. We're asking you to run down the hill and recover in that time. Mm-hmm. You look at last night, you did 12 by 250 uphill.
Yeah.
And we talk about the volume of that, and actually we know you could have done more. Probably 15, 16 was doable.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's trying to just be, we haven't done that, so get there slowly. Just because you're so fit doesn't mean you should just do it. So I guess it's building everything through slow. Yeah. Take your time with it, and if in doubt, back off.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think we've got a little bit rambly there.
Yeah,
so if you want to summarise it into like 5 points that you try and follow in your training, if that's possible, or in your planning and coaching.
Yeah, well, it's athlete first. Mm-hmm. So I think UK athletics would call that, if you've been on the course, athlete centred. Mm-hmm. But that's always been something I believe in.
Yeah.
And that's key, because we want that you as an athlete, if you've got to be healthy.
Yeah.
At all times, healthy. A little bit of fatigue's okay. Too much fatigue's not good. A cold, a virus, a stomach bug, back off. Be healthy. Mm-hmm. Come to training, train hard, healthily. Recovery helps maintain that health. Mm-hmm. So recovery is super, super important, and people don't think of it enough in any walk of life. And then foundations, fundamentals, that for me is two key things. That's definitely movement, and then there's definitely strength, and bridging that is kind of how we mesh that, but also the mobility part of actually range of movement has to be more than we need for running. We need a range of movement that we would see in a gymnast, perhaps. That's maybe a bit mad.
Yeah, touch far.
Yeah, but certainly, we should be able to comfortably swing our leg and get our foot to head height, for example. And just that, and look after yourself. Always look after yourself. Something's not right. Oh, a bit tight. Okay, don't wait till it becomes a problem. Go get a massage. Go come and see Oliver.
So does that apply to just athletes?
Oh, everybody. Get a niggle. The fix is you, and potentially working with somebody, an exercise therapist like Oliver, brilliant, because he'll look at the mobilisation and not just give you a massage. And I love that. The fact that we can get some real feedback from somebody that says, actually, it is a little bit tight, but if we mobilise through, it should help prevent it from coming again. I've given the athlete, the person, some stuff to do, and that's great. That's what we want. Yeah. And that's how it should be. But yeah, I suppose if you said, what's the key? Health. If we're healthy, we can move better. If we're healthy, we can run faster. If we're healthy, we'll be in the sport for longer.
There you go. Stay healthy, guys.
Yes, got it.
I think that...
sorry.
I think that brings another interesting podcast to a close.
Hey, I hope so.
Yeah.
I think...
If you've got favourite session?
Yeah, let's hear it.
No, that's a question for you.
Oh, for me, favourite session. I think as a coach... for us, the Saturday session that we do with the movement and the technique, because I'm more involved, and that's a real thinking time as well, with what you're seeing, and we might be thinking, actually we want that foot to come down better. So what's stopping it? Is it the foot that is the issue, or is it somewhere else in the body that we've got to think about? And then is it something we need on the training ground, or is it something away from the training ground, and fixing that's probably the time I most enjoy from a coaching point of view. If you said my favourite session, I love it. I think it's an outcome one, when we train to a specific heart rate based on racing. Yeah. And I start to get the feedback that the adaptation's happening. And it's like a little bit with yourself. At the moment where you've said, Stu, I can't run fast enough to get to my heart rate that we've set. And it's not the heart rate that's the issue. It's the fact that suddenly your aerobic systems have gone mad and they've adapted so well, the legs have got to catch up. Yeah. And it's how do we do that?
There we go.
So yeah, it's good. I love it. Really enjoy it.
Brilliant.
What's your favourite session?
I quite like a nice hilly fartlek. You don't have to think too much. You can just switch off. It's good. Run to feel.
Yeah, it's good that. Yeah. Yeah, they're always good fun. Yeah. Yeah. There we have it. So, it's a little bit more about some of the stuff that we kind of do behind the scenes. And I guess it's things we don't talk about very often, and people probably have no idea that we do all of this, and they just see us down at Woodburn as a very small group, or if we're at the OLP or wherever really, and that's kind of it, isn't it? Yeah. If you've got any questions or anything, just pop them down below and let us know. Perfect. See you all soon. Nice one. Bye. Bye.